not the biggest proponent, as you probably know by now, of neutral site games, especially when they're repetitive in terms of locale. In other words, we've seen plenty of Dallas and Atlanta. If you cover, follow, fan, whatever it is of Alabama football in recent years. And I know it sounds a little bit bratty because, trust me, in covering this program before the arrival of Nick Saban, there were many years when a lot of us who either cover the program or follow the program would have absolutely killed for the opportunity to go play an opener at Jerry World or head next year to Atlanta to the crazy new stadium. What, over $1 billion? The new stadium in Atlanta that Alabama is going to help open next year against Florida State. So I get that. You know, maybe we're desensitized a little bit as a whole. But what about some neutral site games in some other places for a change? Maybe mix in Chicago. Maybe Washington, D.C. Maybe the West Coast. What do you think? Where would you like to see Alabama play one of these neutral site games? Because we all know they're here to stay. And we can talk about recruiting advantages. We can talk about the help it gives the coaching staff in terms of focusing on a season opening opponent of note. And I definitely believe in that. I think that's very much true. It has to be beneficial in terms of centering your team throughout the offseason and understanding that, look, we're not opening with Charleston Southern or Chattanooga. Straight out of the gate, we've got SC or Florida State next year, or even Wisconsin last year. It certainly has to be a benefit. I get that part. But at the end of the day, it's about the paycheck. And I don't think anybody denies that. It's obviously very lucrative for the University of Alabama to play in these games. You know, Alabama is already set with neutral site games, as we know, for this year with USC out in Arlington. Next year, we talked about Florida State over in Atlanta, return trip to Atlanta. And then in 2018, a trip to Orlando to take on Louisville. That one doesn't grab me. This year, next year, okay, I get it. You can't really get an argument from me when it involves SC and Florida State anywhere. You could play them at Crampton Bowl in Montgomery, and it would be all good. That's a legitimate marquee matchup when you talk about Alabama, SC, Alabama, Florida State. You lose me on Alabama, Louisville. And yeah, you can go back to the 1990 season and Browning-Nagel and the beatdown Louisville put on Alabama out in the desert in the Fiesta Bowl. I don't care about that. I'm talking about right now. So that game doesn't necessarily grab me. And if you're wondering about 2019 and beyond, did a little research this morning, and you can go ahead and pin in Alabama back to Arlington in either 19 or 20. Came across a report on AL.com, Michael Casagrande, Big House as we like to call him, on the beat, wrote a story about a year or so ago that within Alabama's contract for this year's game against SC, ESPN, the S in that is actually a $sign, I think. ESPN has the right to negotiate exclusively with Alabama to schedule a non-conference, to schedule a game between Alabama and a non-conference opponent. Now, that window has come and gone. Not sure if anything was finalized, but I would say there's a good bet that we see Alabama back in Dallas, perhaps, in 19 or 20. So we'll see how that plays out. But where would you like to see Alabama play one of these neutral site games? I told you over the weekend I was up in Milwaukee. Pretty jealous of LSU people right now. their media, their fans. Yeah, I know the game at Lambeau Field doesn't make any sense in terms of recruiting grounds or anything like that. But I'm jealous that the Tigers get to go to Lambeau Field, home of the Green Bay Packers, and play Wisconsin. That's just going to be an awesome experience for everyone involved. Unique, different, fun, something to really look forward to. If you can't have a home and home with Wisconsin or some team in the Big Ten or the Pac-12, yeah, that's the kind of trip I'm talking about. Lambeau Field. So with Alabama, would you like to see the Crimson Tide take on, say, Michigan in Chicago at Soldier Field, maybe? What about Notre Dame in Chicago, maybe in D.C.? What do you think about Alabama going abroad potentially to play a game? Would you go to London? Would you make the trip to Dublin if the Crimson Tide went overseas to play football? Man, you talk about incurring some serious expense. That would definitely be the case if you, and I know Alabama fans, believe me, if they could drive RVs to Scotland, England, Ireland, anywhere over there, they'd do it. Haven't built a bridge yet capable of that, but I know the commitment is there from the Alabama fan base. I know they would travel en masse, but that's kind of one of our topics for today. If you could choose where Alabama played one of these neutral site games, which they receive in excess now, I want to say of $5-6 million. So, they're going to continue to play in these games. Where would you choose for Alabama to play and against whom? 205-342-9904 is the Bud Light hotline. You can get on board right there and give us your thoughts on the topic. And as a matter of fact, we're going to head to the Bud Light hotline right now and talk with JR. Oh. JR, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, Travis. How about yourself?
I can't complain at all. What do you think? What do you think, JR? You're the schedule maker. You're the AD right now at Alabama, and you get to pick. Is there a spot you'd like to see one of these games played?
You just mentioned it, and it really I thought was a fantastic idea. To play someone like Notre Dame or Michigan at D.C., Washington, maybe the Redskins,
right?
Stadium, something like that, something different, something that's changed from Dallas and Atlanta that we so regularly have done. And I'm not against the thought of maybe going to as far as Miami, but I'm not sure that's my top choice. But I do like the idea of staying within a closer range. I mean,
making it more economically feasible for the fan base, because the tickets, the price, face value price on these tickets, it's not $20. Okay.
Right.
It's in excess of $100 typically.
Yeah, and I'm not even against the possibility of playing one of those teams in Nashville at the Titans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to
Nashville.
Yeah, it's a great town. I think you're going to see more and more of that too, JR. These bowl committees, and then these different towns are really getting into this now. The Chick-fil-A, Peach Bowl people really were sort of on the cutting edge of it with Alabama and Clemson back in 2008. But now we've seen Houston jump in. We've seen Dallas jump in, obviously. I think you're going to see Jacksonville continue to try to get back in there. And actually, Jacksonville did it maybe before, 2007. Alabama went down there and played Florida State. So, I think you're going to see more and more cities try to benefit from this approach. It's interesting to me that New Orleans hasn't sort of jumped into the fold.
I started to mention that. I don't know whether it's I really couldn't figure why they wouldn't be. That would be an interesting place.
Do you think New Orleans looks at it like, we've already got plenty? We've got a couple of bowl games. It's obviously a popular spot for conventions and tourists.
Realistically, the win is plenty.
I know, as long as the money's right, and if ESPN's partnering in it, You know the money's going to be right.
And LSU, I mean, the Louisiana State is a fantastic recruiting state. And that's why I set up to venture around in different areas. I'm not saying abandon Dallas or Georgia and Atlanta to go to these others, but at least entertain the thought of venturing around a little bit,
mixing it up. You want to see some variety. You've the Dallas. Let me tell you, Jerry World's unbelievable. Everybody should go once, but when you go 3 times in a year, it's a lot.
I'm not going to sit here and say that that is one of the most fantastic places I've seen Alabama play in. It's just one. It is, like you said, everybody should at least be there to see that one.
I guess you have to give Alabama credit for this. Orlando is different in 2018. Not necessarily my favorite by a long shot, but it is different. So,
it will be different.
And it fits the recruiting.
And who knows, maybe Louisville will up their game a little.
Well, the quarterback obviously is very highly regarded, did some great things as a freshman, and assuming he stays around all 4 years, that's who Alabama would see in the 2018 season opener. So, yeah, the potential is there for Louisville to pack some star power in that game.
Sounds good, Travis. Appreciate it.
Hey, congratulations on winning last week's Southern Fried Sports trivia drawing, by the way, JR. And I
only found out about that yesterday.
Good.
I unfortunately had been indisposed with a hospital visit.
Oh, my goodness.
And so, yeah, I'm excited about that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for taking part, JR. And we're going to have another trivia qualifier that we put out there in just a little bit for this week's drawing, and you're more than welcome to enter that one as well. JR, we hope you feel better and appreciate you taking part on the program.
All right. Thank you very much, Travis.
JR checking in at 205-342-9904 on the Bud Light Hotline presented by Adams Beverages. You can do it as we continue to wear our AD cap or our Nick Saban cap, because let's be honest here. Do you really think any of these games go off without the approval of the head football coach of the 4-time national champion in the last 7 years? Of course not. Of course Nick Saban has everything to do with approving these games for Alabama. So you're Nick Saban and you want to take the program maybe to some other places that you haven't visited with these neutral site games. Where are you going? Who are you playing? What makes the most sense? Dollars and cents, I guess you could say. We want to know. 205-342-9904. We have a thread on this topic going on right now on the BamaOnline.com roundtable. If you haven't done it already, go ahead and get a part of that. A lot of fun, some good stuff there. And we'll run down some of those options from the BamaOnline.com roundtable as we move throughout the program. As a matter of fact, JJ Blocks on that thread right now on the roundtable on BamaOnline.com. He says based upon recruiting and stadiums, he'd like to see Alabama play in the new stadium in L.A., which, of course, is going to be home to the former St. Louis Rams and, once again, L.A. Rams. He'd like to see Alabama play at Levi Stadium, home of the 49ers in Northern California. And he has Atlanta and Dallas as his number 3 options. He thinks those are always good choices in terms of recruiting. Hard to argue with that. Alabama very prolific, or has been prolific in the past in both those areas as far as recruiting goes. Based upon TV viewers and prestige teams, JJ Blocks on the BamaOnline.com roundtable wants to see Alabama face these opponents in order. I'll give you his top 3. He's got Oregon at the top of the list. He's got Ohio State, number 2. Number 3, he's got Notre Dame. Surprised that Michigan maybe isn't a little higher in his pecking order. He does have Michigan in his 5th spot. But, man, it seems as if the college football world is clamoring right now for a Nick Saban-Jim Harbaugh matchup. And we can't necessarily assure that in the college football playoff with just 4 teams. Sure, it's possible. I think a lot of people think it's probable at some point in the next couple of years. But it's not assured. Now, Michigan will play Florida in the Cowboys Classic to start the 2017 season. So that one's already scheduled for the Wolverines. But there is no guarantee at this point that we'll see the much anticipated matchup between Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh.